I think one thing that's confusing is that when people get disheartened or they've been rejected over and over again and they just get tired, let's say they're not dating in a way that works for them, it's draining, the internet isn't working, they just resolve to being alone. And yet, I'll push back and say, well, you're either in denial or you're lying to me because people are meant to be together. And so when they feel better about themselves and a lot more solid in who they are and rested, I guess, then they get back out and strive to get into relationships. So it's okay to take some time off, but to just say, I just don't need to be with another person is just not true. We really need to be with another person in order to become the best people we can become. And also, it's a lot more fulfilling. You might be a really successful individual, and I have a really good friend that is a amazing pilot. And he was flying his plane. It was such a beautiful thing, and he's so happy about his single life. And then he looks over at the co-pilot seat, and there's no one there. He had 50 people to talk about, this wonderful experience on the ground, but he didn't have anybody to share it with in that moment. And that's when he realized my life isn't full without another person. So it's okay to take a break, but don't give up. There's no reason to give up. So Seattle's a really good place for finding a mate because we have a lot of singles. And it's a very friendly place. People get outside. There's a lot of diversity of interests. There's a lot of places to meet people and places to take classes, places to, do outdoor activities. So for that reason, it's a really easy place to meet other singles, which is great. Well, Seattle it may not be the best place to meet a mate because of a couple of different things that we have going on. First of all, we have the most single women living alone, which means a lot of independent women who have their own place and they're happy being there, right? Not necessarily happy being single, but they live alone. We also have the most people online dating as anywhere in the world. Now, that may be good or bad, but what happens is too many people hide behind the internet and say, oh, I'm dating, I'm in a relationship, but they're not talking to anyone, they're not looking at anyone, they're not seeing anyone. So there's an illusion of intimacy here in Seattle. So people need to get a little bit more intimate here and get past just the friendliness in order to meet people in Seattle. So you have to do the little extra piece. So I talked to both men and women, and they both have reasons for not finding love. Let's start with the women first. Okay, women are pretty confused. They think they should have this physical attraction, just like men should have. By the way, men should have physical attraction first. And so a lot of women get caught up in chemistry and they think they need that instant surge of chemicals and attraction and lust and all that kind of stuff, and that's really confusing because we're still wired kind of like we were back in the caveman days where a woman needs to fall in love with the man's mind qualities first, right? Is he resourceful, intelligent, communicative? Can he take care of her? And see, those are the things that women in this society today kind of balk at. Well, I can take care of myself. But that's the woman that comes to the date full of testosterone because maybe she manages a group of people and she brings all of that to the date. And the guy is thinking, whoa, I'm looking for some femininity. And that's a really big problem from a lot of the people that date. For men, I think part of the problem is that they have to have physical attraction first and foremost. And yet they've been told in this society, wow, that's shallow. Here's this here's this nice woman who is intelligent and has a great career. She's perfect for you. And the guy looks at her and says, I don't feel anything, right? So if he doesn't have that attraction, she isn't perfect for him. And so men have been put down for how they're really wired. And they've been told, like I said, that they're shallow. So men need to understand they need the physical connection first and foremost. And then look at her heart qualities and then look at her mind qualities. And quite honestly, and I've said this out loud in seminars many times, that a man really doesn't care what the career is that a woman has. He wants to know if she has a job or not. But he's really just sitting there imagining her naked. And, this is where the men go, oh, busted. And the women go, oh, you're kidding. But it's true. And so people have to, number one, understand how we're wired. I think the reason people don't get into relationships and don't meet good matches is they haven't done their work. We have relationship patterns that we do over and over again. So let's say, for example, a woman is dating a man and he's just everything wrong. Typically, it might be, those qualities from one of her parents, and that gets into the psychology of attraction. But a lot of times, it's the same person that she's attracting over and over again. He just has a different name and face because that's her pattern. So she has to understand, break the pattern. And the way people do that is to really understand, number one, who are they? What are their attributes, their strengths, their weaknesses? How do they communicate? How do they deal with conflict? Do the work to really become a 10. From a 0 to 10, if you're a 10, you're going to attract a 10. If you think you've got some issues, a lot of women think that they're broken. Well, guess what? Everybody else is going to think you're broken too. So you have to do the work to become the best person you can be, to attract the best person, and then really pay attention to how are you dating, who is showing up, because who's showing up is a mirror for how well you've done your work, pretty much. The second part is you really have to do the work to understand the qualities of the person you're looking for. I'll ask a client, so let's say it was a man, and I say, so, what are you looking for in a mate? Well, I'm looking for a woman. I'm like, well, look, there's one. Great. My work is done, And then they say, oh, no, I'm really picky. I'm like, great. Tell me some of the things. Well, if you ask a man, tell me about your perfect car, your favorite car. He knows the make, the model, the color, the smell, the engine size, everything about it. He's got a picture of it on his refrigerator. He walks outside and he sees them. There they are. He's test driven at everything. He's done the work. And people have to do the work, first of all, to understand who they are. And secondly, who are they looking for? Then the third piece, narrow the gap between the two so you're not looking to be rescued. And then the fourth piece is you've got to have some skills, some relationship skills, some communication skills, some dating skills, so that you know where to find people and then how to approach people without getting all flustered and nervous and dealing with rejection and things like that. And to quote Irma Bombeck, one of my favorite people, she said, people spend more time picking out a bathing suit than they do a mate. And I think that that's true, because they know exactly what looks best on them, what fits, what color, and they spend hours and hours in that dressing room. But who does that about understanding the qualities they're looking for in a mate? So I think that that's why a lot of people, they think they should date, they have the drive to hook up and be with somebody, but they're not really taking the amount of time and focused energy that they might on a career or a house or a car. So they need to really get clear. And by the way, when you do get clear, it actually programs the reticular activating system of your brain, the little piece back here, which is the same piece that can be programmed when you're looking for the perfect car or for the perfect house or the perfect career. And it's not rocket science. It is actually strategic business planning to find true love. And that's what I do for people. Because the minute they start talking about love and relationships, people get a little goofy and they make bad choices. So I think people would be better off if they would stop, do the personal work, and then look for the perfect match. And they'd probably find them a lot quicker. attraction is kind of an interesting concept. Men need to be physically attracted first and foremost. And so I teach people how to come up with 5 conversational questions, partly to themselves, partly out loud, in order to actually pre-qualify or disqualify a potential partner in 5 minutes or less. Because like I said, I don't believe in serial monogamy. You got to get quick at it when you've done the work. The first question a man needs to ask to himself is, am I attracted to her? And if the answer is yes, then I think that's perfect. Move on to the next question, right? But here's what really freaks out women is that they think they have to be that blonde bombshell. And what women need to understand is that men have such a different idea of attraction. Some men are attracted to blondes, some brunettes, some petite, some heavy set, all different sizes. And what I know is when people are confident about themselves, what I say is confidence looks sexy on every body. So it isn't about the physical part. Women need to understand attraction comes from that essence, that projection of who they are. So when a man tells me, oh, I'm so attracted to this woman, I say, great, why? And then first he'll get into all the physical characteristics, and that's good, he should. But then he starts to get more, understanding and saying, it's the way she carries herself, it's her energy, it's the way she looks at me, it's the way I feel when I'm with her. And that's a big piece of it. Most people are so afraid of what do they think about me instead of getting out of themselves and thinking, how can I make this person feel good about themselves and feel good about the interaction we're having? Because people fall in love with people when they're not around. And so what happens when you think of that person and you think all these warm, loving thoughts, you fall in love with them. It's not in that moment. But if you're so worried about what they think of you that you're nervous and not conversing in a way that makes that other person feel connected, they're going to think of you and go, that didn't work. And they'll move on, even if you're a perfect match. On the other side, with women, the attraction is very different. Intelligent women understand they need to fall in love with those mind qualities of a man first. Is he communicative? Can he have this wonderful conversation where I feel, again, good about myself? Is he intelligent, right? Can I learn something from him? Can I respect him? Then it's his mind quality, or then it's his heart qualities that she falls in love with. Is he trustworthy, caring, understanding, respectful? And then she will fall in love with him physically. And a lot of women will push back on this and say, no, I need hot chemistry. And I said, well, great, that's a bad boy. And ladies, if you haven't had a bad boy, you got to have one once and then you understand. It could also be for a healing situation. And so that's an attraction, that woundology, as Carolyn Myss calls it. But really, attraction grows for a woman. And so a man is attracted, so he's pursuing sexually too, which is great. And she's still getting to know him, so she's pushing back, which is the way it should be. And then one day when they finally understand the mind qualities, heart qualities, she looks at him and thinks, wow, how come I didn't notice how hot he is? And all of a sudden she falls in love with him physically. So, that's a really big piece of attraction that gets people confused and keeps people out of relationships, I think. Well, part of the problem, I think, with people, finding a perfect match is kind of the problem that we have with changing roles in our society. And we're still changing. And now with the economy, it's even more confusing. But back in the day of the farms, there was one boy and one girl within 20 miles of each other, and everyone knew they'd get married and have a family and they'd live happily ever after. There wasn't a lot to pick from. Well, nowadays we have the internet dating with millions of people online worldwide. It's like this plethora. And we get into the grass is greener kind of thing where people, I don't want to settle. I don't need to settle because there's always going to be somebody else, that pops up online. But I think a big piece is that people are just confused about their roles. We're wired one way, so the man is the protector, the hunter, and the woman is the gatherer and the nurturer. And yet, if the woman is working and has this high-powered job, she's got to bring testosterone to the table. If the man is a good dad and he's taking care of the kids. Oh, is that something we should judge? No, he's being a full person. He's, living a full life. But our society gets confused about what are those different roles. And if a man is sensitive, does that mean he's less of a man? And it's still confusing over time. The women's lib kind of, put a whole bunch of stuff into the mix. And by the way, Gloria Steinem wrote a different book that no one has heard about. She actually wrote a book apologizing for what she'd done to the men and demasculating them. And she found this strong man and was totally in love, but you've never heard of that book, right? Women's movement caused a lot of confusion, both with male roles and female. And after a while, women woke up and said, wow, did we really benefit from that? Now I work full time. I still take care of the kids. I still nurture my family, and I'm exhausted. How is this a better thing? We don't have the roles defined. Then you throw in the economy where pretty much all the people have to work in order to make, ends meet, and you've got that. So what I see is there's a lot of change when it comes to how people commit to one another. There's this thing called LATs, living apart together, people who are married but have separate households. We can't judge those people. I know a lot of those people that are really happy. The traditional marriage, quite frankly, doesn't work. A 50% divorce, 67% if it's a second marriage, it has to be looked at uniquely. But I think part of it is that people have to just stop and spend the time to nurture the relationships that they have. You can't just say, oh, I got married, so now I'm going to move on to my career. It's like buying a plant. A plant needs to be nurtured. And too many people think, oh, my relationship is like a silk plant. It's always going to be beautiful and I can put it in a dark corner. It's not true. So changing roles confuses people. How we're wired is confusing. The economy makes it confusing. And the fact that the traditional marriage, structure didn't work, isn't working. How can we make it work? I think people just need to be more honest about what they need. I think people need to be more skilled in their communication and be more conscious about relationships and how important they are. Because bottom line is, your relationship determines 90% of your happiness or unhappiness in everything that you do. So if you have a wonderful relationship, your work is better, your commute is better, your kids are better, all those hassles, and it's proven that your health is better too. So if you really focus on those things that matter, like a relationship and your health and things like that, the whole world will be different. Your whole life will be different. But we're really going to have to be more conscious about how we do this in relationships. And all the changing roles and the confusion just, throws a big confusion into the pot. And we need to be conscious about it. Passion in life, passion for another person is so exciting and so important. A lot of men tell me, however, I don't want a drama queen. She has so much drama and I'm tired of drama. And I've got a theory that when a person doesn't have an understanding of their purpose in life, they don't have any passion about what they do, the life that they lead, their career, any of that stuff, they bring drama into their lives because they get these pseudo chemicals that are very similar to what you get with passion, but it's not sustainable. And so I have actually known some people that I thought they had a pretty easy, calm life, but they're always bringing drama into it so that they can get that surge. Well, have some passion and you've got that sustained, you've got that clarity, you've got that excitement about life, and you're going to be a heck of a lot more attractive to someone. Because we really are looking for a person who is passionate both about their own lives and about us, but not the drama. And so please don't confuse passion with drama. It's not the same at all. And it doesn't bring you the same consequences in your life. So a lot of people want a relationship. We know that. But whether or not they're ready for a relationship, especially a monogamous relationship, we don't always know that. But there are ways to understand it. Um, what I notice is a lot of people who are separated are online dating. And I just have to say, if you're separated, you're married. And you should either be working on your marriage or working on your divorce. You don't get to date, it's just a distraction. So you really have to have all of those legal, financial, emotional things dealt with from your previous relationships. If you're pining away for your last boyfriend or girlfriend, you're really not available for the next person. And if you're dating someone that's kind of sort of okay, but you think you're going to find the perfect person, you're not available. So be available, be successfully single, enjoy your life, not, being married or separated, not seeing a bunch of people that aren't the one. Be successful. Enjoy your life, do things that you like, get involved with things, and then look for a mate. So get all of those things taken care of first and foremost, and then understand some of the things that really bring health into a relationship. Number one, I believe, is mutual respect. So you've got to respect yourself first and foremost. If you think you're broken, you're broken. So if you believe you're overweight, deal with it. If you believe that you're not as educated as you need to be, take care of it. If you have wild and crazy kids that aren't handled, handle it first before you go out and look for a relationship. So you're actually doing the work. A monogamous relationship, past the mutual respect, you really have to understand who is it that you're looking for, but also what are those qualities that are unique to you. So that what are you bringing to the table? Because the second piece of mutual respect is valuing the differences that you both bring. And when you have differences, that makes the relationship a lot more fulfilling. But in the beginning, you think, oh, they're so cute, he's so different than me, and I just love those little idiosyncrasies. And later on, those are the things that drive you crazy about the person. But really understanding the value that each person brings. Also, before you get into a monogamous relationship, really understand your purpose in life. Don't think that someone else is going to give you a purpose. Have your own purpose, and then find someone who has a similar, not exacting, but a similar purpose that you can be in alignment with, and then they can support you in your purpose, you can support them in theirs. Instead of jumping into their Jeep and running down their wagon and one day running down their road, and then one day you wake up and think, I didn't really get to have fun in my life. I didn't get to do in my life what I wanted to do. So you really need to be successfully single and, at the top of your game before you go out there and get involved in a monogamous relationship. And I really appreciate the term monogamous because that is a commitment. That really is, I'm going to be alone with this one person intimately the rest of my life. It doesn't mean that you get to look outside, the grass is greener, and all the nonsense with affairs and emotional affairs and physical. You've got to make that commitment. And monogamy takes a big commitment. So you've got to be emotionally mature and understand that you can do that. So do your work first and attract a fabulous person into your life. If you're looking for your mate, really be ready and available. If you broke up with someone recently, make sure you take the time to do the healing. And what I've noticed is a lot of people are in love with the fantasy of the relationship that they just left or lost instead of the reality of it. So be clean, be done, do the work, understand what worked in that relationship, what didn't. So now take what worked forward and look for that. What didn't work, turn that around into what you would want to have happen in the relationship and work towards that. So that you're really letting go of all the past relationships. You're not looking for that guy, but a little different. Be real clean in it. And let go of those past loves. Understand they were there for a reason. Learn your lesson. Understand what worked about it, and then let it go and not get caught up in the fantasy of what it really wasn't, so that you're not looking for that person still, and you're not punishing your next relationship for something that person did to you earlier, We really have to be clean and fresh and new for every relationship that we start and move into. So, red flags, that's kind of an interesting topic. A lot of people see too many red flags right away. Everything's wrong about the person. And those are the people that really aren't ready for a committed relationship. And other people don't see red flags if they're waving in their face because they're so caught up in all of the chemicals of attraction and lust and new love. So, something that I say that is very unpopular, but it's very important is do not have sexual relationships. Don't have sex with a person for 3 months so that all those chemicals will come through your body, during the first 3 months, and then you can see the person for who they are. Because later on, people look back and think, oh, it's so clear why they weren't good. I saw those flags, but I ignored them. In some of the flags that you want to look for is consistency in behavior. A person needs to be consistent over time. Well, if you've only met them twice and you jump into bed with them, that's not much for consistency. So really take the time to recognize his words are consistent, the actions are consistent. That's one thing. Do people have other friends? That's something to look at. And you get a chance to meet those friends. Friends are a reflection of the person. I, shy away from guys that don't have any guy friends. Not that you want them to go hang out with their guy friends all the time, but they need to have, somebody besides just the work that they do and their relationship they're looking for. So see if they have a balanced life. Do they take good care of themselves? Or are you going to have to take care of them later on, as they get older? All of those things are red flags that you really want to look for. But whatever history that you have, whatever needs that you have, be aware of the flags that you need to look for yourself and be honest about it. Too many people, it's not that they want to settle, they just want to squeeze this person into the perfect box so that they become the perfect relationship and they'll ignore all of those flags. It could be aggression, it could be, anger, it could be some sort of emotional abuse. You want to make sure that you're aware of all those things and be ready to walk away. There are great people out there. Don't settle for someone that isn't kind to you, isn't nice to you, and doesn't have passion for you, because the person deserves that. But, red flags, don't be too overly crazy about them, but really pay attention to things that later on you're going to be able to say, oh, I knew it. Those were crazy things. So Seattle is a very interesting and kind of unique place to date. The one thing is the interracial dating here, it's very accepted. People here seem to be very forgiving and very open-minded to the interracial or different religions, different ages. It's a very forgiving place, which is great. And I see that trend continuing. But what I'm noticing with the people that are coming to me, my clients and other dating coaches that I talk with, is people are really getting more focused on a richer life, having more, having more excitement in life, more fulfillment, maybe they volunteer more, but having deeper, more intimate relationships. And that's the trending that I'm seeing. And I love it because I think people need to get conscious about what they want and then go after it. Of course, I still see people that are pretty tired, with the economy, their jobs, those things, but people aren't giving up. I see people who are just really getting excited about life, who are wanting more, who are maybe trying something a little different, like they might, take one of my Attracting Love with Feng Shui classes and thinking, what the heck, I'll give it a try and see what happens. They're more open-minded and they're, I think they're more courageous in what they're doing too. And they're willing to hire a coach. They're willing to be vulnerable in their relationships. They're willing to read a book or take a class so that they can have more. They're tired of having these unfulfilling lives And all of a sudden waking up and realizing I didn't like my job, I forgot to get married, whatever. And I really like that people are more conscious and more courageous, and also really excited to be on a quest of more than just having a fabulous relationship, is having a fabulous life. And they see relationships as a big part of that. And that's pretty exciting to me. I think that we're much more open to what a relationship should look like. Should it just be everybody being the same age? Well, for some people, that's important. For other people, the man should be older than the woman. Okay, that's great if that works for them. But this new trend of older women and younger men, it's really not a new trend. And I have to say, my uncle and aunt, we didn't learn for years the difference in their age, but it was very significant. And I watched them age into their 80s, and they aged the same. Instead of with my parents, my father was much older than my mother, and I watched him age and then die before her, whereas my uncle and aunt aged together. So, is there one way to do it? No. If you're uncomfortable with someone being older than you, then that's not working. Or if they're younger. We have to, in this society, we have to just say, if it works for them, it works. And I don't think it's an illusion of happiness with these older guys, younger women, or older women, younger men. It's just people are trying things differently so they can have what they want in life. But everything just works for the individuals, and we have to stop judging people for the differences that they have and realize if it works for them, maybe it's something that someone should be open to for themselves too. Love. What is love? Um, it's more than just a feeling. It's a drive, for one thing. If you go down to Maslow's theory of hierarchy, it's a need to belong. It's a need to have a community and to have someone close to you that is there for you, someone significant, be it they take care of you, whatever. It may be about the procreation. I mean, that's all really about how we're wired. But I think it's a drive, it's a feeling, it's a fulfillment that people are looking for in order to have a really amazing life. It's it's kind of undefinable to me. I think you know it when you have it, and it's something that makes your life so much richer and fuller. But it can be defined so many different ways. I mean, you can love a tree, you can love a flower, you can love a child, you can love an animal, but the love to one specific human being, that incredibly deep, intimate connection, is the most fulfilling thing you can have. And sometimes it's pretty scary because if you have that love, you're very vulnerable, you're very open and transparent to that other person if you really truly commit. So to me, I think it's an evolution of a person to really allow themselves to bring that love into their lives. I think it's something that we all need and want and are driven to, but we don't all achieve it in life. It's really about caring for another human being more than you care about yourself. And I think a lot of parents understand that. But it's something that just really fills up your heart and your whole being. Is it definable? I can't really give it a definition like I could define dating for you. But I just think it's a real drive that will allow someone to become the most amazing person that they can become by being truly loved and cared for by another individual. And by giving that selflessly to another human being, you really become evolved, the best you can be for yourself. I really don't have a definition. It's more than a feeling, though, that's for sure.
A couple of years back, I was talking with a female acquaintance. She expressed her frustration with dating. She didn't want to meet a guy in a club or a bar or a meat market. She wasn't religious, so going to church wasn't really an option for her. I told her that men connect around shared interest and activity. I asked her what she liked to do or what she felt passionate about. It seems she'd been a pretty competitive cyclist before she got married and had a child, but after the kid, it just seemed like there just wasn't enough time. And since her divorce, she'd actually been thinking about getting out and getting back on her bike and spending more time riding. She shared with me that her son was now old enough that she could leave him alone for longer times and she could be out doing things that she liked to do. So I suggested that she not only start riding again, but perhaps join a local riding club. So she took my advice and she started riding. Sometimes she went out and just rode on her own. Sometimes she took her son along with her. And she did find a local cyclist club and started riding with them, usually about once a weekend, 2 to 3 times a month. After she started riding with the club, she told me that a couple of things happened. She noticed that she'd become just more active in general, and she began to make new friends and associates and acquaintances, and she found herself just being a more outgoing person. Then about 2 years after our initial conversation, I bumped into her. I hadn't seen her for a little while, and she told me that she was dating a really great guy, and they'd been going out for about 6 months, and that things were going really well. She smiled and told me that she really wanted to thank me. I asked her if she met him at the riding club. She laughed. She said that he doesn't even ride seriously, but that actually she was introduced to him by a friend she had met at the riding club. Most of the really cool things in life, the unexpected things in life, the serendipitous things in life happen when we're with people. And I often tell people, if you're hanging out at home alone in your living room, you're not going to experience many miracles. I call it putting yourself in a position to get lucky. One of the things I like about Seattle is just the diversity of people here. You've got people from all kinds of ethnic, racial backgrounds, all kinds of different educational levels. I think there are a lot of single people living in Seattle. So there's a lot of opportunity if a person will just take advantage of it. The thing that you constantly hear is about what's called the Seattle freeze. You hear men, women talk about it, people who've grown up here, people who moved here. In Seattle, a generalization is that it's superficially nice. People smile, they'll say hello, they'll say, sure, let's get together and do that sometime. But in general, people in Seattle seem to have a certain independent side to them and maybe even a reclusive side. And so that's probably the most frustrating part. Well, I hear both men and women complain about the whole single scene in dating in Seattle. You don't hear a lot of people saying how great it is to date here in Seattle. What I hear from the men is that the women seem um, withdrawn, they won't make eye contact, they're shy, they're difficult to approach, that the women don't seem to care whether or not men interact and maybe actually might even feel offended or put off if a man approaches. And what I hear from the women, interestingly enough, is that the men are too passive, that the men don't approach, and that if men do approach, they'll talk about anything and everything under the sun, but give me your phone number. And so the women complain that they want the men to be more direct and get to the point and actually ask for the phone number so the woman isn't just left there hanging, wondering, is he going to get my number? Is he going to ask me out? So I hear again about that reclusiveness, that passivity from both men and women. So it seems to be part of our general culture here in the Seattle area. I love coffee shops. I do most of my work in coffee shops. I have an office that I work in to see clients, but all the online work that I do is almost always in a coffee shop. Seattle has some unique coffee shops. Of course, we have all of our corporate cookie cutter coffee shops as well. But one of the things that I tell the people I work with, and especially since I work with a lot of guys, I tell them basically get out of the house, expand your route, linger in public, talk to people everywhere you go, test for interest, and I teach them how to do that, and then walk through the open doors. And so basically, I say miracles happen in the context of people. And unless you have a living room full of people, you're not going to have many miracles happen. So I say get out of the house, and I think coffee shops are one of the best places just to go be social. Go read a book, go read the newspaper, go take your laptop to the coffee shop. I have several friends. In fact, when I left to go to Mexico a few months ago for a few months, friends of mine, all of whom I just knew from my local coffee shop, gave me a going away party and a welcome back Cinco de Mayo party. And I'm a big believer that it's through these kind of connections, not just trying to meet women or meet men, or not just trying to find a date in a coffee shop, but they're a great way to be part of the bigger public of things, to be around people. And that is what allows miracles to start happening. And when I say miracle, I don't mean a religious type thing. I just mean opportunity. Opportunity happens when you're out, when you're around people. Seattle, coffee shops just seem like the natural place to do that. So in terms of there's so many singles out there, and why do so many of them stay single? I think a lot of different reasons. As I said, I work primarily with men, and I think the biggest reason I see is anxiety. A lot of the guys I work with are just not naturally social. It's not something that ever came real easy for them on the playground as a kid or in junior high or high school. So they tend to do what comes easiest for them. And for a lot of people, that's work, it's watching television, it's playing video games, it's surfing the internet. And so we have to be willing to deal with a certain degree of anxiety to change our relationship status. And so that's not only do I teach men skills for being more social and approaching people and starting conversations and being genuine and direct and having a plan, I help them learn to soothe their anxiety. So I think anxiety is a big part of it. The other part of it is that I think people in Seattle get caught up in whatever it is they're doing, and then whatever it is they're doing consumes their life. Now, that may be work, it may be their hobby, it may be extended family, it could be any number of things, but it's like they don't make room or space for something else to come into their life besides that thing they're doing. Now, again, maybe part of that's anxiety, maybe part of it's just not knowing how to do it different, but in many cases, it could be that they've just given up on finding somebody, so they just go dive into whatever they do. So we have to be willing to open the door up to let something come into our life. And quite honestly, I tell people I work with to find a person who's a really great match for you involves some degree of luck. I mean, if you think about it, the odds that here you are as a single available person meeting this other single available person, and you both have a lot in common, you're a good match, there's good chemistry, and you're both single at the same time, available at the same time, in the same space as each other, talk to each other, connect with each other, go on a date with each other, that there's the odds of that happening are actually pretty small. So what I tell people is you have to put yourself in the position to get lucky, right? Yeah, there's luck involved, but you have to do things to get lucky. And I had to confront this in myself about a year and a half or so ago. And I had to ask myself, what am I doing that makes it hard for people to come into my life? What am I doing that keeps me safe or keeps me disconnected or keeps me not being fully available? And I made the conscious decision I was going to start living as if anytime in the next 30 days I was going to cross paths with three women who all had the potential to be my really great match. And if that was indeed the case, I had to decide a couple of things. Number one, what did I have to do to put myself in the position to meet these potential women? Well, of course, I had to be in public, had to be interacting with people. But I also had to ask myself the question, what do I have to do to get out of my own way? What do I have to do, perhaps stop doing, that maybe is preventing people from coming into my life and getting close to me? As a therapist over the last 30 years working with couples, one of the things that I've seen is that most people in co-creating a relationship, they unconsciously find a balance of how much closeness can we tolerate versus how much apartness can we tolerate. And so this is pretty much an emotional dynamic, not just physical apartness and closeness. And so what couples do unconsciously is they get close enough to somebody to feel some degree of connection, but not so close that their deepest intimacy fears get activated. Now, these fears often include being smothered, being trapped, loss of self, or being abandoned or left, and or being found out. And a lot of people have fears that if people just got to know me, they wouldn't like what they see inside. So we want to get close to feel connected, but not so close that one of these things gets triggered. But at the same time, and so to do that, we build some kind of emotional walls to protect us. Maybe we fill our life with too much stuff, we're too busy, we don't reveal ourselves, but at the same time, we don't want to get too far apart because that feels too lonely, too isolating. So every relationship seems to find this floating balance of togetherness and apartness. And what I found out as I started dating, and especially the closer I got to the person I was dating, is that their defense mechanisms, their protection mechanisms started coming up. And often you don't see this when you first meet a person because people are inviting you in. They like the idea of the fun of getting to know somebody. But then when you actually start getting closer and closer to somebody, you start seeing more and more of their defense mechanisms. So I've had to look at those things both in myself, and I encourage the people I work with to pay attention to what are the things I do to protect myself and why. What am I most afraid of? Am I afraid of being trapped and smothered and losing who I am? Or am I afraid of being abandoned and cheated on? Or am I afraid of being found out? And if we can get some idea of what those fears are, we can pay attention to what it is we do to protect ourselves. And then as we become aware of that, we can start letting those protections down when coupled with good boundaries and something called differentiation, the ability to exist as an individual and keep a healthy space around that, but still let people in and get close to you. 100 plus years ago, men and women's roles were fairly well defined and probably pretty rigid. The man was expected to support his wife and kids. The woman was expected to have kids, get married at a relatively young age, and then stay home and keep the home and make the meals and feed the family and sew the clothes. And then so that, as we all know, has changed dramatically over the last 100 years. What I think hasn't changed and what we need to be conscious of in terms of dating and relationship is the evolutionary biological way that we've been wired by hundreds of thousands of years of our human evolution. And that is, if you look back, like I said, 100 plus years ago, up to 100,000 years ago, it primarily was the men who were providing and protecting. They were the ones who went out and killed the animal and brought it back to feed the family. They were the one that protected the clan from danger out there. And the women, because they were more vulnerable physically and emotionally through bearing children, having to take care of the children, tended to huddle closer around the clan, the fire, and would create bonds and connections. And they had to learn how to read body language and facial expression, and connection and security was what was most significant for their well-being. And all of this, from an evolutionary point of view, was geared towards passing genes on to the next generation. So men that were good at killing the beast or fighting the battles or solving problems often were able to get a mate and pass those genes on. Women that were safe and protected could often find a mate, or the mate would often provide that protection. They could have a child, perhaps hopefully raise it to adolescence to where they would have a child. So our species kind of was built around these fairly defined roles. Now, even though we all have some degree of masculine, some degree of feminineness, and we have choices about how to interact that in the world, when it comes to mating and what tends to turn women on, what turns to turn men on, and I'm going to speak very generally, and there's exceptions to every generalization, is that that's been wired into us over hundreds, thousands of years. And if we ignore that and pretend it doesn't exist, we're probably going to struggle in our dating. So to make generalizations, and this is fairly obvious if you're a guy, as a man, we tend to be attracted to an attractive, healthy, younger female. That's just a biological wiring inside of us. And that's okay, even though maybe since the 60s and 70s, many of us have been told, oh, that's bad, that's objectifying women. But the truth is, we are wired to objectify women in terms of a sex object. Women, on the other hand, are wired to view men as a success object. How can a man protect me, provide for me, help me, and my offspring feel safe? Now, granted, we have lots of options today that allow us to go different routes besides that, but it is still part of our biological wiring in terms of attraction. So if men know that the deepest biological desire for a woman is to feel safe, to just feel comfortable and good in the presence of a man, that's important information, and he will have to act accordingly. If women know that, yes, the first thing we men notice about a woman is your physical appearance, well, it might pay to put some effort into that. And that's probably one of the biggest complaints I hear from men in Seattle, is that the women will layer year round. Their idea of fashion is a North Face fleece, and maybe they don't shave their legs, or they don't put a lot of effort into it, or they pack on a few pounds during the winter because they can cover it up with clothing. And I'm not making a judgment about that, but in terms of, if you're a woman and you want to be noticed by men, we men do notice physical appearance first. Now, we'll add to that, most of us guys aren't so shallow that that's the only factor that determines relationship. We also want to know, are you a cool chick? Are you an interesting person? Are you intelligent? Do you have values? Do you keep up on what's going on in the world? Do we just find you interesting? So it begins with physical and often expands from there. One of the things I discovered as a man who works with men is that when it comes to relationship advice or how relationships work, much of the information in books and magazines and shows is written by women to be consumed by women. So, in a sense, a lot of what's going on out in our world that men are kind of picking up on is that, oh, you have to be a good listener, or don't try to solve the woman's problems, or be this way for a woman. And the truth is, there are a lot of things that go into what makes for a great relationship from a male masculine point of view. And that doesn't really get addressed because book industry doesn't think men will buy books on it. So almost all relationship advice is geared at women. And so men will read that and think, oh, that's what I need to be in order for women to be interested in me. And in fact, it often leads men to do the very opposite of what works. So one common example I see of something men do that actually doesn't work and women actually find frustrating. I know they find it frustrating because they've been telling me this frustrates them for 30 years. The man thinks he's being nice, being pleasant, being considerate to the woman. So he'll say things like, well, do you want to go out sometime? He isn't being real direct, kind of indirect, letting her make the choice. And the biggest question men ask that women say they hate is, what do you want to do tonight? Do you want to do something tonight? Now, the guy thinks, based on everything he's heard of how to be pleasant and nice and a gentleman to women, that he's given the woman opportunity to choose. But women consistently tell me they hate that. They feel burdened when the man says, do you want to do something tonight, or what do you want to do? And going back to our biological wiring, most women tell me they prefer, in fact, I've asked women this over and over again, what do you prefer? Would you rather a man leave it up to you to decide what you're going to do on a date, or would you rather him have a plan, make a suggestion, and say, hey, let's go do this Friday night, with the flexibility that it can be shaped from there, but at least he gets the ball rolling. So that's the man kind of using the biological programming of him being, in a sense, the provider protector. He gets things going, and the woman being the one who gets to connect and be nurtured and feel safe because he has a plan. He's thought about it ahead of time. And I think that's what makes women feel the best. is that the guy has actually put some thought and planning and preparation into what he's proposing that they go do. That makes a woman feel safe. It makes her feel like this guy pays attention to detail. Men come to me all the time and they say, I don't know what my passion is. I haven't, I got to find my passion. But I'm a big believer that passion is not a singular thing. It's more how you live your life. And one of the suggestions I make to the men I work with is stop doing anything you're not doing with passion and start doing everything you do with passion. And I tell them, from the way you shave your face, to mow the lawn, to drive to work, do it with passion. Instead of living your life with a, oh no, I have to, turn everything into an, oh boy, I get to. And what I found in terms of this passion is, again, going back to that genetic, evolutionary, biological wiring, is that women seem to be amazingly attracted to a man who has a passionate sense of self about him. And I've had women tell me that in terms of their attraction to me. I've had women say that in terms of what they're looking for in a guy. They want a guy with a sense of passion, a sense of direction, a sense of excitement about how he lives his life. Now, that's a very inward, organic space that we create of just living our life 100%. I tell guys, everything you do, do it 100% and do it in the open. Nothing hidden, nothing half-assed. And by the way, the quickest way to turn a woman off or make a relationship go stale is start hiding things and start doing things halfway. So women are attracted to that passion and to that open transparency. Now, drama, on the other hand, just to give you a brief background of my theory about drama. Now, as a guy, when I talk about drama, I'm thinking about the kind of chaos that seems unnecessary but seems to come up in relationship or in certain people's lives. My theory is that men and women both need tension for attraction and attachment. Now, typically, guys need physical tension. We need to be physically attracted to a woman to feel that attraction and attachment. In general, women need emotional tension to feel attraction and attachment. And I tell guys, just look at the soap operas women watch. It's all about tension. It's not nice people doing nice things to other nice people. It's people doing mean things, which creates tension. Watch a basic chick flick. We got the man and the woman in the beginning of the chick flick, and there's tension between them. They don't like each other, but we all know they're going to get together because it's tension that draws people together. And if a guy takes his girlfriend or his wife to a chick flick, she's walking out of the theater after watching all that emotional tension thinking, oh, I wish I could find a love like that. And the guy's checking his BlackBerry or his email because he's bored today. Guys tend to hate the drama. The basic drive of the masculine is for freedom and mastery. So we as guys will respond to drama like a fire hose to fire. Let's put it out, get everything calm so that we can have this freedom to just kick back and do whatever with no interruption. But going back to our evolutionary programming, if you think about it, if women got their sense of security and connection by being around the campfire and the clan with the children, the quickest way to create tension and connection between another person is to have drama with them. Some kind of chaos. And if you're watching this and listening to this, think in terms of every time you've been with a person who tended to create drama or live in drama. It activates you because anxiety is contagious. So if they're anxious about their drama, you're now anxious because of that contagion of anxiety. And that contagion of anxiety actually connects you to them. So drama is a very powerful connecting factor that you will often tend to find in women, but nowadays it seems like you start finding it more and more in men. In fact, I've actually listened to a number of young women complain that the guys they hang out with are more dramatic than their girlfriends. So that's a little bit scary if you think about it. So a couple more things that can get in the way of dating and relationship success. One is a concern about fairness, and the other is, I guess, what I'll call gender projections. So the whole fairness thing is I hear men and women both complain or say something like, well, I shouldn't have to do X, Y, and Z just to get a date. Or I shouldn't have to do to get the opposite sex to pay attention to me. If we honor how Mother Nature has wired us, we'll have greater success, no matter what our gender is. If we honor how Mother Nature wired the opposite sex from ourselves, we'll have greater success. So guys may say, well, I resent that I have to be rich or I have to be tall in order to get women to be attracted to me. Well, you don't have to be rich or tall, but you still have to honor how women are wired to be security-seeking creatures, and you have to, if you want to date successfully, you have to activate that sense of security and trust and well-being in a woman. And a woman might say, well, I shouldn't have to lose weight. And I'm not talking about the distorted images that media presents to us about women being skinny and thin and physically perfect. But if a woman says, well, I shouldn't have to dress up, or I shouldn't have to lose weight, or I shouldn't have to be, flirtatious with a man. Well, you don't have to. But if you want to be successful, you do have to know what biologically activates a man and gets his attention. So what I'm saying is, if we get caught up in this fairness routine, and that is one of the things I see in Seattle, it seems like we expect life in the world to be a utopia where everything should just work the way we want it to. Well, it doesn't. So let's do what works. And so that's one thing, the fairness thing. The second thing is gender projections. Since I work a lot with men, I hear men make generalizations about women. Well, women can't be trusted, or you can't depend on a woman this, or women just want rich men. And they use those gender projections, I think, to just keep themselves feeling safe and protected. Because if you can project something on all women, even if you just experienced it with one or two women, but now if you say all women are that way, it keeps you feeling safe. The truth is, whether we're talking about men or talking about women, nobody is all one way. So maybe you'll find certain traits in the feminine gender and certain general traits in the male gender, but every woman is an exception. Every guy is an exception. So I encourage people, pay attention to what you project on the opposite sex, whether it's they can't be trusted, or you can't depend on them, or they can't commit, or they can't do that, and realize that's your projection from your own limited experience, and there are plenty of exceptions to whatever that generalization is. Success in any relationship, I think, requires maturity. And that's probably a negative word for many of us to speak of maturity or immaturity. But successful relationships are made up of two mature people. And so if you're single, wherever you're at in your life, if you think in terms of how do I need to grow up as an individual, that's your way of preparing yourself for a healthy relationship. Do you seek comfort over challenge? And that's not very mature. Mature people challenge themselves. Mature people take responsibility for getting their needs met, and they co-create cooperative systems with other people and organizations to get their needs met. Mature people have full, interesting lives. Mature people honor their passions and pursue them. A very important trait of maturity, especially in relationship, is honesty. Mature people tell the truth. Immature people, like children, are afraid of harm coming to them if people know the truth, and so they hide things. And again, that's why I often say, nothing hidden, nothing half-assed. Live your life full bore out, all out there and all out there in the open. So if you're trying to put yourself in the place of being able to create a healthy, monogamous, growing relationship, work on who you are as an individual, and look at the ways that you need to grow up, in a sense, that you need to challenge yourself, that you need to develop as a human being. And as you're doing that, that opens more and more doors to meet other mature, growing people. So the first thing that I would say is that be careful of initial attraction. The things that we are initially attracted to in another person, and even the things we're initially repulsed by in another person, are often a projection of our own earliest relationship experiences, often dating back to early childhood and our experiences with our mother and our father. And so a lot of attraction is operating at both an unconscious level, but also at a dysfunctional level. And without going too much into detail with this, when we're young children, we develop relationship technologies to try to cope with whatever inadequacies our parents had in their ability to love us and meet our needs in a consistent, predictable way. It is those relationship technologies, whether it be being a pleaser, a fixer, an avoider, a hero, whatever our relationship technology is, we will unconsciously find people who allow us to use those relationship technologies. Now, they may be as dysfunctional as hell, but they're what we know. They're what we learned at an early age. So always be cautious of what you're initially attracted to. And if you know what those things are in you that are part of your dysfunctional attraction set, for me, I'll just reveal this to the world. I am amazingly attracted to unhappily married women. Now, if you think about it, that's not a very good recipe for a successful relationship. But my earliest love relationship was with an unhappily married woman. And I, as a small child, thought, well, if I can just be the good man, this woman will choose me and she'll be happy. Well, I've tried that a time or two, and it doesn't work well. So I had to be aware of what my natural attraction tendencies are. I also happen to be fairly attracted to unavailable people whom I can pursue to try to get them to be available. Now, that's a way that I protect myself from my greater fear of being smothered or trapped by a woman. Now, again, I have to be conscious of that. So the biggest red flag to watch for at first is, what is it that you are attracted to in a dysfunctional way? Now, I read somebody years ago made the statement that we tend to be attracted to people who have some of the worst traits of both of our parents. Again, because it lets us do our early programmed relationship technologies in relationship. Now, with that said, in terms of red flags in a dating relationship, I tell the people I work with, go as slowly as possible to find out as quickly as possible what's a person's nature. And the whole purpose of dating is to find out a person's nature. Now, that's not the reason most people date, and therefore most people date pretty ineffectively in terms of building a healthy long-term relationship. In fact, one of the things I often say is the way most people date is the worst possible foundation for building a healthy long-term relationship. Women will ask me when they find out that I work with men and teach them to date, and they'll say, well, what are men looking for in a woman? Or what choices do men make when they pick a woman to be in a relationship with? And as I've mentioned, well, appearance is often the first one, but I find that most men base their relationship decisions on three things, none of which actually are very good for building healthy long-term relationship. One, she's not too bad looking. Now, actually, if a woman's really good looking, most men are intimidated by that. But so most men, she can't be too bad looking, she has to show some interest in him and be open to having sex with him. And that's how most guys form their relationship. She's not too bad looking, she seems to like me, and she'll have sex with me. Now, that's a terrible foundation for a long-term relationship, especially once you start having sex, because then when the red flags come up, well, she's not too bad looking, she likes me, and she has sex with me, and we don't want to walk away from that. So know ahead of time red flags you want to look for. Untreated addictions, untreated mental illness, moodiness and anger outbursts, difficulty handling their money, rage and resentment about past relationships, dishonesty, infidelity. Look at what their history has been. And again, part of dating to find out a person's nature, you're going slow and you're creating lots of different situations in which you get to view them. It shouldn't all just be fun and games, so we're just all having a good time. Do things that require the person to be spontaneous. Be around their family, be around their friends, bring them around your friend, bring them around your family. See them in as many different contexts as you can, and keep your eyes wide open for anything that would be detrimental to a long-term relationship. One of the things I encourage people to pay attention to is what I call the second date rule. The longer you date somebody, unfortunately, in many relationships, the longer people are together, the worse they treat each other. You begin to see maybe who they really are and what they're really like in relationship, which is kind of a paradox to me. It seems to me that the longer you're with somebody, you should treat them better. But I tell people, apply what I call the second date rule. If the person had done this behavior on the second date, would you have asked them out for a third date? And use that to measure, is this an unacceptable behavior or character trait in this person in terms of long-term relationship? And then perhaps most importantly, be a good ender. If you find out that this person has character flaws or behaviors that are completely unacceptable in a long-term mate, talk about it with them. If you've been dating for a while, if it's just a first or second date, just move on. But if you've been together for a few weeks or a few months, talk about it. Talk about your concerns, not in a blaming way, but in letting the person know, if you're going to be in a relationship with me, this is unacceptable. Right? And invite them into dealing with that issue. And if they do, great. If they don't, move on. Well, I call it the second date rule because the first date rule is usually everybody's on their best behavior. We're all trying to impress each other. And after a second date, you're actually starting to think whether or not you like this person enough to go on a third date. And third date usually means you might see them for a while. So the second date rule is we've let our guard down a little bit and we're not just doing the traditional sitting here, oh yes, this is nice, we're having coffee or whatever type thing. But it just sounds kind of cool to say second date rule. In terms of the deals of relationship, I think there's a couple of different things I would look at. We all get into relationship. If you got two people, they get into relationship because there's a reciprocal meeting of each other's needs. Otherwise, why else would we be in a relationship? And as I've mentioned, mature people create numerous cooperative relationship systems with people or organizations to help them get all of their needs met. So if you're in a relationship where perhaps you're giving but not getting much back, that doesn't make a lot of sense if it's a voluntary, intimate relationship. So there is a deal. Basically, we're agreeing to help each other meet each other's needs. And one of the things I've often said about relationships, a healthy relationship should lighten your load, not add to your burden. So that's why we get into relationships. It makes life easier and more manageable. So yes, there is a deal. Now, one of the things I find that kills relationships over time is the expectations that people have of the relationship. You're my girlfriend, so therefore you should fill in the blank, whatever your expectations are. Or you're my husband, therefore of course you should do whatever it is I think you should do as my husband. Those unspoken and spoken agendas often suck the life out of a relationship because now we're actually expecting somebody to meet a specific need that they may or may not be qualified or able to meet. One of the things that I find, if you get down to it, a lot of guys, what they're looking for in a woman is a buddy with breasts, and I think a lot of women are looking for a girlfriend with a penis. Those expectations can actually kill a relationship. If a guy's thinking, well, I want my girlfriend to do this, this, and this. Well, maybe she's not equipped to do it, and maybe women in general aren't. You got to have good guy friends for that. And maybe a woman saying, well, I want my husband, he should be interested in listening to the things I want to talk about. Well, but maybe he's not. That you need good girlfriends for that. So sometimes these agendas and expectations can actually suck the life out of a relationship. And perhaps more significantly, they build what I call little building blocks of resentment. And these little bricks of resentment, well, because you didn't do what I expected you to do, they start building over time and become a big wall, a big barrier in a relationship. So, yes, we come together to help meet each other's needs, but mature people have lots of different systems. It's not all on one person to meet all of their needs. When we expect one person to meet all of our needs, we're in trouble. And again, we have to become conscious of what those expectations are. And again, a lot of what's written about relationship nowadays is written from a female point of view. So, for example, if a woman thinks, well, my boyfriend should be my best friend, he should be my soulmate, he should always want to be with me, he should always want to listen to me if I have something going on. Well, that's probably not going to work. He's a guy. He wants the guy version. He wants the short story to the point of what's on your mind. He wants to know you, but he doesn't want to be your girlfriend. So those agendas can be detrimental to a relationship. One other thing that I've seen as a relationship counselor, as a marriage counselor, is couples will come to my office and they'll be obviously in distress and they're battling and they're maybe arguing or there's stuff going on, or maybe they don't battle and argue, but they don't talk. And one of the things that has always surprised me as a marriage counselor is these people might be coming to me for weeks, and then out of the blue, something comes up that is a major long-term resentment one of them has towards the other. And one thing that couples often do that actually is very detrimental is they do make unconscious deals. Okay, I won't focus on this thing you do that's actually detrimental to our relationship, but in return, you can't focus on this thing that I do that's detrimental to the relationship. So I won't focus as a guy on the fact that you're smothering our children and too involved with the children, as long as you don't focus on the fact that I'd rather spend all my time playing video games and not pay attention to you. We just won't bring it up. In fact, a lot of times what couples do long term is that they punish the other person for bringing up anything that we think should be off limits to be talked about because we don't want to change that thing about ourselves. So those kind of deals, i.e., I won't bring up the stuff I'm pissed off with you about as long as you don't bring up the stuff you're pissed off with me about, those deals are long-term relationship killers. Well, this probably sounds odd, but I think love is overrated. I think we've romanticized it, we've magnified it, we've probably sucked the life out of what it means. And to add to that, in English, I think love is kind of limiting. Most languages have lots of different words that take in a whole spectrum of love and friendship and caring and concern. English doesn't have much of that. So that's why a lot of other languages, especially Latin languages, European languages, are much more beautiful, colorful when speaking of love. One great religious philosopher said to love your neighbor as you love yourself. So if you think about it, what was the standard by which we love other people? It's the love we have for ourselves. So we have to be loving towards ourselves, be kind, be gentle, be forgiving towards ourselves, make our needs a priority, take good care of ourselves. And then this first level of loving maturity is that self-love. But there's another level, and that's the ability to ask, what's good for the people I love? What's important to them? What's in their best interest? But we can't really ask that question until we've asked and answered this question. So love, I believe, is the ability to make your needs a priority and take very good care of yourself, and then to ask the question, what's in the best interest of the people that I care about? And when appropriate and when necessary, to sacrifice what's in your best interest for the best interest of the people you love and care about.
Not right with it. Walked about a mile even further away. We get caught up in meaningless thoughts that take me away. And I just fall